Hope so. And today I'm going to go off about what we dig into the truth hiding in plain sight. Why native speakers fumble their own language. I came to this country as an immigrant. I didn't know a single word of English. I didn't even know I was in America. I didn't even know there were countries. I didn't even know, I didn't know any of these things. I was a little kid, and I was just, I was on a plane, boom, 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 and I'm in a different country, and people were all speaking different stuff, and I didn't understand anything. And I was thrown into school. Honestly, it was pretty traumatic. But because of that, I came with a very strong STEM background, um, and I was one of those weird kids that went to high school for STEM classes as a middle school kid. And the only reason why I liked STEM was because um, I think the liberal side was very arbitrary and had like, I couldn't see some kind of basis to it, and it was just very ambiguous. But I think the real problem was that um, you know language is so watered down. So let me just start this off. So eventually, I just became an English teacher, and I stumbled on the truth. Native speakers often trip over their own language. They lack the words to say what they mean, turning big ideas into jumbled mess. I'm going to share how I use AI and clever tricks to turning students into writing champs with claim evidence reasoning. So let's unravel why this happens and what it means for our world. I'm also going to talk more about, um, you know, this, but I'm just going to give the anecdotal side. So native English speakers often struggle to master their language because school focus on comprehension over articulation. So if you remember in school, well, at least in conventional English teachers are going to be like, oh, what happened in chapter three, blah, 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 comprehension, right? And it'd be like, oh, what did the author say? What is the author's intent? That's like basic inference, but mostly it's comprehension stuff. So it leaves you unable to express complex thoughts clearly and warping how they see the world. So this is going to pretty much frame your brain, because you're very neuroplastic at a young age as you develop, because this is all you do. And if you think about it, like, this is so messed up, because think about your primary teachers, your kindergarten teachers, your middle school teachers. um, you know they're like very conventional teachers. They're like, they love reading books, and honestly they're not very smart. So let's get to the evidence. Teaching in a huge US school district, um, I worked with kids labeled below grade level. Some even compared to kindergarten, or some even labeled as kindergarten due to their scores, based off their standardized testing scores, right? In junior high. So their junior high school kids, they did so bad they were labeled kindergarten level. So which is, and some of these kids are like proud of it too. Like, I remember I was, one of the kids were like, "Oh, what does it say?" And I'm like, "It says 200," and like that number translates to kindergarten level. And they're like, "Is this good?" And I'm like, "No." And he was like celebrating, telling his friends, like, "Oh my god!" But yeah, these students, aren't stupid, but they mix up imply and infer and turn out sentences or words aimlessly. Before I get to the facts, like, I think this is because how they're taught. 2023 NAEP study confirms that only 24% of 8th graders are proficient in writing. That's a national wake-up call. The problem? Schools lean hard on reading and group chats, assuming kids will magically learn to write. They don't. So I'm reading off this article, but that's stupid, because think about it. They do learn how to write in school. It's just the teachers don't know how to write. So this is like a system. So what I did differently as an English teacher who came from a STEM background, was very analytical, was I use AI to crack down standardized test rubrics, which not a lot of English teachers are going to be doing that, or yeah, they're not going to take a logical mathematical approach or use AI to do that. But I went to the national standardized test rubrics. I downloaded all of them. I run it through AI. I'm like, hey, look at these numbers, look at the trends, look at these samples. Give me, like, put it on a distribution curve. I run through many methodical things, many statistical modeling, stuff like that. And pretty much I was creating a formula where I was trying to, okay, well, first step, I was trying to understand the rubric. Like, what are they being tested? What do they really want? And you know how, like, standardized testing scores have, like, some kind of rubric of, not meeting the standard, proficient, or like learning, proficient, and mastery. So I'm trying to comprehend those categories. The classification will be like definitive nomenclature, so how they actually define it and use the words to classify those like categories. So pretty much, they're trying to understand what will allow you to be classified in that category. Because this is important because um, you want to know how you can demonstrate your level to be at this level, right? And two is understanding your demographic. Like I said, I had students who have been failed for 8 years, so technically they didn't learn anything. They're still kindergarten level. Yeah, they might have learned all these things, but they didn't know how to actually like practice it. So like the students that were super behind, like for example, an eighth grader performing at a kindergarten level, um, to what extent can I get them to? Like if the rubric was on up to, is it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 is like a perfect score? Like, can I get the students who are at 0 or 1 who can write like one sentence or just give you a summary when they're asking you for a complex claim? Can you get them to a 3? And the students who are doing, in the between like 1, 2, 3, can I get them to a 4? So that's kind of like my logical thinking. So going back, the trick, multiple choice. Okay, yeah. So I worked through AI. The trick was multiple choice questions were a roadmap. They showed you exactly how essay prompts expect you to write. So what I figured out was that, all these ACT, SAT reading portion of the test, they give you like a multiple choice question, right? And then they have a writing prompt. The multiple choice questions are actually going to guide you exactly what you want to write within your writing prompt. So if you actually do your multiple choice, and let's just say, that part is pretty easy for you. You're good at picking out details, you're focused, you're able to find the right answers, right? The author's intent. Like, oh, this is about um being environmental friendly because plastic kills our environment. That's not blah, blah, blah. Something about environmental friendly. You get it right. So they give you the question. They're like, oh, what word choice helped you understand that? The tone was, we should be more mindful of our behaviors, right? And then you get the right multiple choice question. You would actually use the question of that multiple choice. You go back, right? You use that question of the multiple choice, and you would use that part of your writing, and then you use the multiple choice to kind of articulate because that's exactly what they want, and that's how you're going to get a perfect score. So don't fill it in with other stuff. Just write exactly what they want you to write. So that's what I taught to my students, to use the questions to guide their writing, and boom, the students were scoring. The students that were scoring from a 0 to 1, they were doing 3 to 4. The students that were in between, like they were like in that 1 to 2 to 3 range, they were getting a perfect score. So they aren't stupid. They just didn't know what they want. Like they just didn't understand like what was important. Like I think if you remember to your English class, you're always like, oh, what was the main idea? Like that's not important. I mean, yeah, that's important, but talking about the main idea is not important. It's being. So for example, um, you do a very simple exercise because taking a methodical approach to writing, like a mathematical formula, an algorithm way, is rare to them. So you want to start very easy. You want to start very simple. So have like true, like like burger or pizza. Have those kind of questions that are like duality questions, where like people can argue for or against one side, and have them have a habit of deciding and picking a side. So, for example, one of my favorite examples is pineapple on pizza, yes or no? Most of the people are gonna be like, "Ew, pineapples don't deserve to be on pizza, Mister." But you know, it gets students fired up, and that's exactly what you want to capture because you want to train them to understand that a writing prompt is to be fired up, to have your evidence and reasoning to support your that emotional feeling that you feel. So they write their claims being like, "Hey, pineapples is an insult to pizza," and or you can be like, "Hey, pineapple pineapples on pizza is an insult to Italian culture," and then they're gonna back it up with they're gonna have to find evidence from the text. So whether they talk about like how it was originally made to serve the queen, and then they could talk about how like it represents some kind of novelty or something like that. Or you can do the contrary, where they might say, hey, it doesn't really matter what's on the pizza because it's about, the role of the pizza. So you're gonna have them argue. So for example, they might say like, hey, like, what does a pizza represent? It represents when we come together, as a family, as friends, it's a social gathering. It's what bridges us in a social gathering. We eat pizza on, parties, Super Bowl, stuff like that. So they talk about how, yeah, like, you know, pineapple on pizza might be insulting to Italian culture. It's, pizza represents a social construct of bringing us together. So it's like arguing, you know, evolution of a trend or innovation over ingenuity or origin. So once they have the habit of doing things like that, right? That was just an example. They understand the CR format better. And CR just stands for claim reference reasoning. And I think all of your arguments, or even when you talk, you should just have a CER background because over time you're going to be precise in articulation, and that's what happened to the kids. And the vocabulary that I use, which isn't you know or unorthodox, they were able to pick it up like a sponge because they're neuroplastic brains or they're young. Like they're learning like 500 Italian brain out words like parapim, purpam, tum 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 tum, sour, like all that shit. So like might as well learn some similar weird sounding words like conundrum or whatever. So